Global TV News Express, Vice President Shettima leads national tribute as Nigeria honors foreign heroes. In business, federal government orders banks, fintech to remit value-added tax on service fees. On the foreign scene, polls open in Uganda amidst crackdown on internet blackouts. And in sports, federal government hails Super Eagles despite losing AFCON final tickets. Hello and welcome to all of viewers in Nigeria and around the world to News Express on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Ubong Osoro. A quick reminder, Global Television is on DSTV channel 365 and Star Times channel 276. Nigeria today stood in solemn reflection as the nation honored its fallen heroes at the 2026 Armed Forces Celebrations and Remembrance Day, marked by an emotional parade and wreath-laying ceremony at the National Arcade in Abuja. Kikelemo Okere brings details.
At the National Arcade in Abuja, silence filled the air as memories of sacrifice and service took center stage. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who was represented by the Vice President Kashim Shettima, led the country in paying tribute to officers and men of the Nigerian Armed Forces who paid the ultimate price in defense of the nation. The ceremony began with laying of wreath, first by the Vice President on behalf of the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, followed by leaders of the National Assembly and the judiciary, service chiefs, veterans, and families of the fallen heroes. A minute of silence followed as prayers were offered for the repose of the souls of the departed and for peace, unity, and security across the country. In a deep symbolic moment, white pigeons were released by the Vice President into the sky, representing peace, hope, freedom, and nation's collective prayers that the sacrifice of the fallen heroes will lead to lasting unity and security in Nigeria. As the pigeons soared, many in attendance watched in quiet reflection, some holding back tears. The solemn mood then transitioned into the military parade as the contingent of the Nigerian Army, Navy, and Air Force marched with discipline and precision. A powerful reminder that the spirit of the fallen lives on through those still in service. For families of the fallen heroes, the ceremony was both painful and proud, a national acknowledgement that their loved ones are remembered and honored. As the last-minute salute was rendered, Nigeria renewed its vows never to forget the courage, sacrifice, and service of its fallen heroes. Kikelemo Okere, Global Television News.
The Trade Union Congress, TUC, has thrown its weight behind the ongoing strike by the Joint Health Sector Unions, JOHESU, and rejected the federal government enforcement of the No Work, No Pay policy. In a statement jointly signed by its president, Festus Osifo, the Secretary General, Nuhu Toro, TUC described the stoppage of salaries as unacceptable, accusing the government of undermining ongoing negotiations and worsening the hardship faced by health workers amid rising economic pressures. The Congress warned that continued intimidation of JOHESU members could trigger a nationwide industrial action. The federal government and the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, has formally signed a landmark agreement aimed at reforming the nation's university system and ending a 16-year industrial impasse. The agreement includes a significant increase in academic salaries and improved welfare for lecturers. Education correspondent Priscilla Obasi brings the report.
At a formal ceremony in Abuja, the federal government and ASU put pen to paper on a new agreement to replace the renegotiated 2009 pact more than 16 years after its last signing. The agreement, which takes effect January 1, 2026, includes a 40% upward review of salaries for academic staff in federal universities following approval by the National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission. This rise applies across academic ranks and is meant to boost morale and stem the brain drain that has affected the sector. Minister of Education Maruf Olatunji Alausa described the signed pact as a decisive turning point in public university governance and staff welfare.
Today's agreement is a clear and deliberate, with unprecedented demonstration of the commitment of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, to quality, accessible, and uninterrupted academic calendars.
Among the key provisions, the agreement also introduces enhanced pension terms where professors retiring at age 70 will receive pensions equivalent to their annual salaries, as well as the establishment of a National Research Council funded at none less than 1% of Nigeria's GDP to support research and innovation across universities. Speaking on behalf of the academic community, ASUU President Chris Piwuna said the union expects the government to implement the terms fully, ending the cycle of prolonged strikes that have disrupted academic calendars. The pact also provides for improved funding models that prioritizes research, laboratories, libraries, and staff development.
This agreement focuses on conditions of service, funding, university autonomy, academic freedom, and other systemic reforms that will reverse the decay, curb the brain drain, and reposition our universities.
Major stakeholders at the event included vice-chancellors and registrars of federal universities, representatives of TETFund, leadership of ASUU, members of the University Education Department of the Federal Ministry of Education, and officials from the National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission, highlighting broad institutional support for the agreement. The pact is expected to be reviewed after 3 years and represents a significant shift from years of stalled negotiations as both sides seek to build lasting industrial harmony and strengthen Nigeria's higher education sector. Priscilla Obasi, reporting for Global Television News.
The impeachment process against Rivers State Governor Similaye Fubara has suffered another setback as two additional lawmakers withdrew their support for the move. The legislature cited appeals from political leaders and stakeholders, calling instead for dialogue and a peaceful resolution of the crisis. With 4 lawmakers now distancing themselves from the process, pressure is mounting on the Assembly leadership as division deepens ahead of the next plenary session. Former Kano State Governor and NNPP leader Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso has said he will only consider joining the APC if clear guarantees are provided for Kano State government and the welfare of his political supporters. He stressed the need to protect the political structure built under the NNPP and the Kwankwasia movement, including elected officials and grassroots loyalists. The statement comes amid growing speculations over possible realignments ahead of the future political contests. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has intensified efforts to curb the supply and abuse of hard drugs in Nigeria, with the deployment of officers across Nigeria's land, sea, and air borders to intercept illicit drugs coming to the country and leaving the country. The Deputy Commander General and Director, Assets and Financial Investigation of the agency, Dr. Ibrahim Abdul, disclosed this in an exclusive interview with Global Television. Zaura Adnazi reports.
As Nigeria puts up a tough fight against drug abuse, cartels and patrons are busy adjusting their tactics in circumventing security agencies and the hurdles set by the law. What are the implications of this reality? We find out in this report.
Drug abuse, particularly among youths, has continued to pose a serious threat to public health, national productivity, and social stability in Nigeria. Experts warn that early exposure to hard drugs increases the risk of addiction and long-term health challenges, with far-reaching physical, mental, social, and economic consequences. Medical professionals further link drug abuse to mental health disorders, noting that young people who abuse drugs are more vulnerable to depression, anxiety, personality disorders, and other behavioral problems. In response, the National Drugs Law Enforcement Agency says it has strengthened its strategy to cut off the supply of illicit drugs at source. The Deputy Commander General and Director of Assets and Financial Investigation, Dr. Ibrahim Abdul, explains that NDLEA officers have been strategically deployed to land borders, seaports, and airports to monitor and intercept drugs being smuggled into and out of the country.
Whatever NDLEA is doing is by virtue of what Section 3 of the NDLEA Act Cap N30 provided. The agency that has the sole responsibility of tackling hard drugs in Nigeria, to the exclusion of all other law enforcement agencies, is NDLEA. And that is why we put in place officers in land, sea, and air borders to check drugs coming and going out of the country, and also officers in state commands and also strategic locations in this country.
Dr. Abdul says beyond enforcement, the agency is also intensifying preventive measures, especially among youths. He explains that traditional rulers and religious leaders have been integrated into NDLEA sensitization programs to help educate communities on the dangers of drug abuse. These structures, he says, are aimed at grassroots sensitization and early intervention to discourage drug abuse and related crimes.
There are so many things put in place by NDLEA under the leadership of General Marwa. First, we have the war against drug abuse, which is a tackle, which is meant for doing advocacies to so many places to sensitize people on the dangers and menaces of drug abuse through the usage of traditional institutions, teachers in schools, religious leaders, and so many other sectors of the society.
As the NDLEA intensifies border surveillance and community engagement, stakeholders say sustained awareness and collective responsibility remain key to protecting Nigeria's youths from the dangers of drug abuse. Zahra Nasr, reporting for Global TV.
The Federal Capital Territory Administration has announced plans to begin sealing properties and revoking land titles over unpaid ground rents, C of Os, and land use conversion charges from next week. The exercise will target properties illegally converted from residential to commercial use in high-profile areas of Wuse and Gariki, where others have failed to meet payment obligations. Officials say the 2026 enforcement will be broader than last year's operation and aimed at restoring compliance and planning and land administration laws in the country. You're watching the live broadcast of News Express. News Express continues after this weather forecast. Stay with us.
Hello, we're glad to have you with us on the weather forecast for Thursday. Dust haze is still the prevailing weather condition, and we don't expect any significant improvement in visibilities, particularly across the northern states, as thick dust haze is expected in the region. To the north-central region of the country, moderate dust haze with horizontal visibilities ranging between 2 to 5 kilometers is expected. To the southern parts of the country, slight dust haze is expected, while patches of clouds are anticipated in parts of Bayelsa and Rivers State environs. Temperatures are significantly dropping, particularly in the northern states. With this temperature drop and dust haze still persisting, we strongly advise individuals with respiratory problems take necessary precaution, stay warm, and we encourage our airline operators to visit our eFlights folder portal for more weather updates. That's the forecast for Thursday. I am Theodora Itu. Thank you for watching.
In business, the federal government has directed banks and fintech companies to begin collecting and remitting 7.5% VAT on selected electronic banking system charges from January 19, 2026. The tax will apply to transaction fees such as transfers, USSD charges, and card issuance, while interest on savings and deposits remains exempt. Officials say the move is aimed at standardizing value-added taxes collections across the country on digital and financial platforms and boosting government revenue. The federal government has eliminated tariffs on over 6,000 products imported from the United Arab Emirates, while the UAE has removed duties on more than 7,000 Nigerian goods, opening up new opportunities for trade, investment, and job creation. The Minister of Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, made this known at the signing of the agreement at the ongoing Sustainability Week in Abu Dhabi. Business correspondent Kike Lomo-Okere brings the report.
The historic agreement under the Nigeria-UAE Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement aims to expand market access for Nigerian products, facilitate investment flows, and strengthen the country's non-oil export drive. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, says under the pact, Nigeria will immediately remove tariffs on nearly 4,000 products, with the remaining 2,294 items phased out over 5 years. The UAE will eliminate tariff on 2,805 Nigerian products immediately, with others phased out within 3 to 5 years. She added that service and investment opportunities are also included, allowing Nigerian businesses and professionals to operate and establish entities in UAE.
Has been a long time coming. We've negotiated for about 11 months, very tough negotiation, but both sides are delighted that we have a good deal. This particular agreement will allow Nigerian businesses access into that regional hub of the Middle East, and it's a gateway to the rest of the world. It's an area where Nigerians are competitive in services. Nigerians will have up to 3 months to go into the UAE market in a 12-month period.
The minister further reveals that the agreement positions Nigeria as a gateway into ECOWAS and the African Continental Free Trade Area, while supporting the government's economic diversification and renewed hope agenda. She says relevant agencies have been mobilized to ensure smooth implementation to guide exporters on new market opportunities.
Cover, as they call it, an umbrella, has been long awaited by UAE businesses that want to move into Nigeria and into Africa. Nigeria is going to be used as a hub for businesses from this country to come into Africa to invest, to help us as we partner for our industrialization under the Renewed Hope agenda.
With tariff removed on over 13,000 products, the CEPA is set to boost non-oil export, attract foreign investment, and create jobs, marking a significant step in Nigeria's drive for economic growth and stronger ties with the UAE. Kelomo Okere, Global Television News.
The World Bank has retained Nigeria's economic growth forecast at 4.4% for 2027, signaling sustained optimism about the country's medium-term outlook despite lingering structural challenges. This is according to the World Bank Global Economic Prospects Report released in January of 2026. The report aligns with projections earlier published in its Nigeria's Development Update in October of 2025. The institution also upgraded Nigeria's 2026 growth estimate to 4.4%, up from 3.7% forecast contained in its June 2025 Global Economic Prospects Report, reflecting improving macroeconomic conditions in the country. On the foreign scene, voting has begun in Uganda's general election amid heavy security presence and internet shutdown and widespread concerns over violence and repression. President Yoweri Museveni is seeking to extend his decades-long ruling as polling situation open slowly across parts of the country, with security forces deployed in major cities. More than 21 million voters are registered, with unemployment and economic hardship dominating concerns among young voters in Uganda. The United States has announced an indefinite pause on immigrant visa processing for 75 countries, including Nigeria and Ghana. The Trump administration says the move is part of efforts to re-access immigration procedures and curb abuse of public welfare systems. The suspension, effective January 21st, will not affect temporary tourists and business visas. Sudan's Army Allied Finance Minister Jibril Ibrahim says widespread destruction, massive military spending, and plummeting oil and gold reserves have left Sudan's economy in very difficult times. His comments came nearly 3 years into the army's war with rival paramilitary forces. Zahra Dasi tells us more.
This week, Sudan's Prime Minister announced the government's official return to Khartoum, recaptured last year, but the Finance Ministry is among those yet to fully return. Dressed in combat uniform, the former rebel leader said Sudan, already one of the world's poorest countries before the war, lost all sources of revenue in the beginning of the war, when the rapid support forces overtook the capital, Khartoum.
Definitely, our economy has gone through very difficult times. We lost all sources of our revenue in the beginning of the war, as a result of the fact that almost we used to collect revenue, 80% of it from the capital. Most of the industry, most of the big companies, and all the economic activity was concentrated in the center.
Ibrahim's ex-rebel group, the Justice and Equality Movement, once battled Khartoum's government, but it has fought on the army's side as part of the Joint Forces coalition of armed groups. Zahra Nasr, reporting for Global TV.
In sports, hosts Morocco have advanced to the AFCON final after defeating Nigeria 4-2 on penalties following a goalless draw after extra time. Goalkeeper Yassine Boudoua made 2 crucial saves during the shootout as Morocco booked a final clash with Senegal. The defeat ends Nigeria's title hopes in heartbreaking fashion 2 years after losing the final to Ivory Coast. Meanwhile, the federal government has praised the Super Eagles for their performance and resilience at the African Cup of Nations despite their semi-final defeat. Information Minister Mohamed Idris says the team displayed unity, determination, and national pride throughout the tournament. Arsenal secured a 3-2 away victory over Chelsea in the first leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final at Stamford Bridge. The Gunners took control early and maintained the advantage despite a spirited Chelsea fight back in the second half. The result gives Arsenal a narrow edge ahead of a return leg at the Emirates Stadium. As Global Television News Express comes to an end, here's a recap of our top stories. Nigeria today stood in solemn reflection as the nation honored its fallen heroes at the 2026 Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day, marked by emotional parade and wreath-laying ceremony at the National Arcade Center in Abuja. In business, the federal government has directed banks and fintech companies to begin collecting and remitting 7.5% VAT on selected electronic banking service charges from January 19, 2026. On the foreign scene, voting has begun in Uganda's general election amid heavy security presence and internet shutdown.